There are many stories out there that could keep you up at night, but what stories could really give you the creeps? What stories would make you check under the bed, and what stories would really make you afraid to go near your closet when the sun has gone away? So grab your blanket, turn on the light and keep your eye out, for this is 5 Urban Legends to keep you up at night. Two dorm mates are in college in the same science class. The teacher reminds the class of a midterm the next day and to study up. Jane gets asked by a football player in her class to go to a dance. Not wanting to waste her chance to be with a secret crush of hers, she accepted his request. Mary, the other roommate, has no interest in going to the party and so wanted to study for her midterm exam. After a period of flirting with her date, Jane was completely unprepared for her midterm, while Mary was all up to date with notes she had taken. Jane headed back to the dorm room about 2 a.m. Not wanting to wake her roommate, she decided to sneak into her room. She went to bed completely nervous for the midterm exam the next day. Jane decided to wake up extra early the next day and ask Mary for help in the midterm. When Jane woke up the next morning, she went over to Mary to wake up her and ask her for help. After no response from her roommate, Jane turned Mary over. She was horrified to see a petrified look on Mary's face. After looking at her roommate, she noticed that Mary had been slaughtered, and when Jane looked up, she could see written in Mary's blood, "Aren't you glad you did not turn on the light?" Once there was a beautiful young lady that lived in a small village, where everyone seemed to know each other, with the young lady being the only young person of her age. The village seemed to treat her like their own. It seemed like a perfect place for her. This young woman lived with a medium-sized dog. She loved this dog so much that the dog would sleep under her bed every night. One day she went around to her parents' house, whom lived in the next town, for dinner. While there, the parents told the young lady that there was a killer that escaped prison that night. He was on the loose and was last seen near her village. When at home, not wanting anything to happen to her or the dog, she went upstairs and locked all the windows. Next she went downstairs and locked the windows and doors. As time was going by, she decided to go to bed. The young lady got dressed and gave her dog a brush. She got into her bed while the dog went under her bed. About 2 a.m. the young lady was waken up by what felt like a tongue licking her hand. Thinking it was her dog kissing her hand, she brushed it off and went to bed. Another hour later, she was waken up by yet again what she thought was the dog licking her hand. Again she decided to brush it off and went back to sleep. Nothing else seemed to happen that night. The next morning she woke. She went to the bathroom to do her daily routine. After being shocked awake, she saw written in blood, "Humans can lick too." After being terrified, things turned worse when she saw in the reflection of her mirror, her dog hanging by the neck with its neck ripped open and the bath filled with its blood. A young girl at the age of 15 had just landed her first job, looking after the neighbors' children from 7-9, 3 days a week while the children's parents went out for dinner and dancing. Being very excited of earning her own money, she went over to her neighbor's house. About 8:30 at night, the young girl got a phone call. An old raspy voice was speaking down the other end. "Have you checked the children?" she heard from this man. Thinking that it could be one of her friends pulling a prank on her, she decided to hang up the phone and went back to watch her favorite program. After 15 minutes had passed, the phone rings again. It was the same old raspy voice. "Didn't I tell you to check on the kids?" the voice said. Now feeling a little shaky, the young girl called the police. They told her they would trace the call next time he rang. The third time he rang and the same old message, but afterwards, the young girl got a call from the police. "You need to get out of the house," they told her. "The call is coming from inside the house." The young girl, now fearing for her life, went upstairs to gather the children so she could make a hasty exit from the house. However, when she got to the kids' room, her face to white as a ghost as she looked on the wall and found written in the children's blood, "Why did you not check on the children?" She turned around to run out of the house, but horror struck as she saw a shadow in the corner of the room. The young girl went missing that night and no one had heard from her since. A young lady had just moved into her first ever apartment. She was hysteric at the thought of living on her own and not having anyone to tell her what to do. However, even before she got through the foyer doors, beknown to her, she was already being watched by one of her neighbors. As she reached the third floor of her apartment block, this neighbor came out to greet her. However, she had a really bad feeling about him and she just could not describe what he gave her the creeps. Ever since he opened his door, he just seemed the odd man that would give anyone the creeps. The first night went without a hitch. However, as she went to work the next door, the same neighbor was out there to greet her again. Again she got the creeps from him. She managed to squeeze by him without even saying a word. Later that day she came back to the apartment. She thought someone had been in her room as things had been misplaced. However, putting this down to her just moving in and not having all her stuff unpacked, she put this to the back of her mind. Later that night while sleeping, she was awoken by the sound of a text message on her phone. Now half asleep, she opened her phone and began to read the new message. Her face was white as snow as she read the text. "I am under your bed." She did think for a second and thought it was perhaps her friend. However, when she went to put the phone back on her nightstand, the phone fell off and went under the bed. She had to get on her knees just so she could reach it. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized when she put her hand under the bed, it was not the phone that she could feel but the back of the head of a person as he tried to hide. Now fearing for her life, she grabbed her phone and made a hasty exit, after which she called the police. Turns out that her neighbor had a key to her apartment and hid under her bed.
A family of 4 was in a deep sleep when they was awakened by the most terrible heckling laugh. Not knowing where this laugh was coming from and afraid that someone had broken in the house, the father went from room to room, window to window, and door to door, just to find the location of the laugh, but to no avail. Thinking that it was perhaps a few people who had too many to drink, he decided to send everyone in the house to bed including himself. While the children was sleeping, the man and his wife was up chatting about what they heard when all of a sudden they was stopped in mid-sentence again. This time, however, the heckling laugh got louder. They had to cover their ears for the sheer loudness of the laugh. Now afraid, he goes into his son's room and grabs a baseball bat. Looking around the house, there was still no sign of a break-in and still no sign of anything in the house being disturbed. Thinking again it was people outside, he put on his shoes and exits the house. All he wanted was to have a word with these people, to keep the noise down. However, he could not find anyone outside. He turned around. To his shock, he saw a man on the roof of his house. He had a great big smile on his face. He started to laugh hysterically, getting louder and louder. The man told him to come down from the roof and to stop laughing, but this did not work. Then as quickly as the man saw the figure on the roof, with one great big leap, the figure had disappeared. Now scared for his life, and his family's, he ran inside and called the police. Now with police at his home, he told them about the event and what happened. The police went around the garden and house to find any evidence, but all they could find was burnt footprints in the ground.